I know how to make things work. The reality is I run the company. As soon as it opened, I hated it. Drugs and alcohol. I just was running the wrong thing. Business on the cusp of change. I really like being on my own. They want to feel like they're part of the solution.
So knowing your history, so at that point you feel, well, blacklisted was how Carla put it. That's a good way. Spited by an industry that you've loved and done for a long time. I believe you're still in your 40s, if my math serves me right, and you decide, so I'm gonna try to do some things on my own. Is that accurate?
Well, what was happening was this all happened during the around 2000s when
Okay.
a lot of entrepreneurial startups were going on. I decided to get involved in those. What I actually am good at is I'm operationally an excellent executive, manager, operator, whatever you want to call me. Back then, I used to say I know how to make things work. You get a lot of people who have good ideas. A lot of people have things that they want it done. They don't know how to execute it, from the simplest to the most complex side. They can't get it done in order. They can't see all the other pieces that have to come together each time as you build the ground floor to take it to the first, to the second, to the third. I was always able to see those pieces. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very good, organized, even if it's just in my head. I know things happen. I know who to call, how to get it done, all these kinds of things. And that's a very translatable skill, is what I discovered. All right.
Sure.
It's a very translatable skill.
Yeah.
Historically, I become the number two guy at places. Why did I become the number two guy? Because usually the number one guy is a conceptualizer and the idea guy or the founder of some idea, but he hasn't a clue, in all reality, how to make his own vision happen. Like in all the record companies, you always keep saying, I'm the executive vice president, I'm the executive vice president, general manager. The reality is I run the company. The number one guy is there because he's very good with artists or very good with marketing or very good with promotion. All right. But he doesn't know how to run the rest of the company. All right. He's not going to be sitting there for negotiating. He's not going to be checking out the marketing budgets and making sure you make money. He's not going to make sure that all these other people. I mean, I had 18 and 19 vice presidential reports at Capitol Records, to me, to keep the whole company moving in a direction. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm the guy. And so what was happening now with these entrepreneurial companies, you had all these VCs coming in and they were backing people's ideas, but now they needed to have people come in to watch the shop, be able to talk
make
to
the
board of
ideas
directors.
actually work.
Yeah.
To do the most important thing, which is to execute.
To execute. And so that's what I did. I did several of those. I was not lucky enough to be involved in any of them that actually made it. Like I say, I was very good at helping people lose 80 or 90 million dollars. That was my big job for those couple of years.
Well, I was just getting ready to give you the nickname of the executor, but if you didn't execute, then I can't call you the executor.
Oh, I executed. Executed the money, But a lot of them were flawed plans. I got in there and I actually warned people afterwards. When I got in, I'd say, you know what, you need to reduce your funding, or unless you do this, it's not going to work, or unless you do that, or I think you should change your whole business model to become more of this or that. Most people don't listen because they're very headstrong at that point, or it doesn't fit, a certain profile they want. So I wasn't surprised that they may get another guy's technology wasn't good. Another guy's technology didn't actually own the technology. Another guy overreached what he was trying to do. Another guy was actually a liar. At that point, what happened was one of the last thing before the laundry business was I got a phone call from two guys who had gotten their money by selling a small platform on the East Coast, and now they wanted to start a record label. Together with another fellow, we met with them and convinced them that if they want to lose $2.5 million really quick, they could start a record label. But I had a different idea in my mind. My idea was to create an entertainment center that on weekends provided entertainment to bring money in. And during the week, we would sign artists and we would have our own facility to showcase them, our own recording studio. So we have a small stage, a large stage, three rehearsal rooms, one recording studio, the ability to run events over the weekend and bring money in. And in other words, it was self-funding and self-perpetuating once we had it.
Sure.
I thought it was a good idea. I think that it could have worked, except for two things. In the intervening period of building it, the record company fell off the cliffs. It was the Napster time, right? And
yes.
all the big record labels that we thought we were going to sign licensing and distributions deal closed up shop because they didn't know what was going to happen to them. Yeah. So we lost the ability to do the distribution licensing deal that would have provided us the money to sign the artists. So we had to turn the thing totally into a nightclub. And I found the space. It was a 20,000 square foot space in Hollywood, on Hollywood and Gower. I then arranged for all the permitting and everything, took a period of time. I arranged for all the construction design, all the construction. And I was doing this all alone at that point because we didn't need anybody else because I was working. So I'd be working right here at this desk, in the morning, doing all the paperwork. At noon, I would go down to the construction site, meet with all the contractors and subcontractors, go over everything. My partner would come down to have lunch with me at Al Wazir, our famous shawarma place. He would leave because that was his job done. Now we had lunch. And then I would go meet, some other people if I had to. And that became the whole thing until we were ready to open. I then also found the people to hire to be the promoters of the club, to find the artists, the DJs, the talent to come in and run the events. And it so happens like one of the guys who I ended up finding went on to become one of the biggest promoters out there, runs these huge festivals now of 250,000 people. Is so big, he got involved in bribery schemes with the LA government, Los Angeles government. So big that he actually married one of the housewives or things of whatever from reality show, whatever that is, but they have their own reality show. But anyway, I found him in the beginning, proving I still can find people, right? And he brought in.
So who is this person?
I'm not mentioning any names of people who have wronged me or have got on to different things. All right.
Okay.
But he didn't wrong me, by the way. He was a great guy, really great guy. And I enjoyed putting this whole project together, supervising construction, working at my desk, doing everything to be done, being out in the field enough, doing all that. As soon as it opened, I hated it. It was everything I never did. If you go back to my college days, and even my record business days, drugs and alcohol. I know it's hard to believe. I'm the only guy who went through 21 years in the music industry, never used drugs. That was one of the things I was known for. Trust me, I was in plenty of rooms, all right? And I would tell you, but nobody even would bother me. I'd be the guy they skipped, that kind of thing. And overdoses and neighborhood problems and fire marshals and crowds of people. And I have to tell you, in all my years of doing things, I never had more anxiety than the 6 months that place was open, that I was still involved. I would go out at 10 o'clock at night. I'm normally going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. I'm going out at 10 o'clock at night. I'd be home at 6 in the morning. I'd have to wake my son up and we go off to hockey practice. We do hockey practice. or the game, come home. I would take a nap for 2 or 3 hours, have dinner, and I go out again. It was crazy. And the anxiety of being there. I mean, a couple of funny stories are, once a friend of mine was in town, and he's from high school, a friend of mine, and he's actually like 5'5", but he at that time was lifting weights and everything, right? And I had to go to the club that night, and he came with me, and obviously he's following me everywhere I go. Everybody thought he was my minder. He was like my Bruce Lee, who's going to be there.
Your bodyguard
thing in the world, my martial arts.
Your personal
protector.
security.
I mean, it was just really funny. And then probably the end of it was my daughter and her friend came. They wanted to come one night because one of their favorite DJs are on. And I guess, what was she back then? I guess she would have been 14 or 15, right? And we're at the front of the club and then we want to go out to the back, and we're going through the back, and crowds everywhere, and we're kind of going a beeline like this. And then all of a sudden I see this guy go to my daughter, and I can see what he's saying. Do you want any E? Right? I went through there and I belted this guy, and all my security guys came in and grabbed him out of there. And I just said, this is enough of this, right? So I sold my shares to the guys from New York who thought this was the greatest thing in the world, and they wanted to come out here anyway and start being part of it. And I decided the only reason you want to be a nightclub owner is if you're thinking of pimping yourself, and that's what you want to do, that kind of thing. And otherwise, why? And being that wasn't of interest to me, then why the hell am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't seem like
doing that. So I sold my interest to those guys. However, it left me liking what I did for those other 18 months. I really liked being on my own. I liked setting things up. I liked the construction of the building. I just was running the wrong thing.
It sounds like the nightlife, I guess that's what I would call it. When you own a nightclub and you're operating a nightclub is probably the better word. That's definitely not a family-friendly environment as you've laid out for us. And that was not the life for you. But I know that you loved the aspect of building it and permitting it and, I guess we'll call it executing on the business plan, right? Of building it. It was just that owning and operating it wasn't for you.
So how did you figure out what was for you?
Right.
Instead of nightclubs.
Well, that was all the other aspects made me very, very happy. And also not having to deal with board of directors or other people like that, or have, I really was on my own. I was telling everybody what was happening. They weren't basically interfering. I had very little interference. And don't forget, for years now, I would still be reporting to headquarters or budget meetings or, having to explain yourself or make decisions about why you were doing things and whatnot, So what I kind of decided was I wanted to see if I could find something very similar to that. What I really was talking about was becoming a small business owner, I guess, if you think about it.
Right.
All right. So I started looking at skate parks, car washes, I think at the time, owning a gym, because I was actually working out a lot back then too. I was looking for businesses like that. Also businesses that I did not have to be anywhere at any time. I didn't have to show up at 9 o'clock. I didn't have to be there all day. I didn't want anything that required me to be there full time. I wasn't able to find anything at that point. And I was playing ice hockey back then, adult ice hockey. I've been playing ice hockey my whole life, and I'm still doing it, probably stupidly, especially now how my body feels. But I was in the dressing room lacing up before the game, and my team was an older team. We had a team where like 8 of us were doctors, 4 of us were lawyers, the rest of the guys were business people, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't it wasn't a kids team. We played the kids teams. God, oh yeah, we played the kids teams. So I'm saying, guys, I'm looking for a new business to buy. Anybody have any ideas? And the one guy right over there said, have you ever considered laundromats? Well, this was a a comment that ultimately was equivalent to Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate. When, remember at the very beginning, I don't know if people even know The Graduate movie anymore, but when in the beginning, when somebody comes to him and he's just graduated college, he's milling around a reception his parents are giving for him, and somebody comes up to him and says,
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, sir, yeah.
Plastics.
plastics, the future, right? So anyway,
Right.
the laundromat thing resonated, and I started looking into it very, 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 very seriously. This guy was connected to PWS, and he was able to set me up at the time with the owners of PWS to go in there. I also, over a year, looked at more than 200 stores. I also went to the 2003 Clean Show while I was making my decision. I was able to go there and meet. Oh, that was great to be able to meet all the different manufacturers and distributors and look to see what was happening in the business then. And one is I saw business on the cusp of change in my mind. I thought this business was going to change greatly. And the second was that I realized that I had my own vision, which meant that I couldn't buy an existing store. All right, I wasn't interested in buying an existing store, either economically or vision-wise. I had an idea of what I wanted my stores to look like. And so I needed to find a distributor. So I went and I met with all the distributors in the Los Angeles area. And I met a great distributor called Sparkling Laundry at the time, with a great bunch of guys who, interesting enough, all three of them are still friends of mine today, even though Sparkling itself has ceased to exist. They helped me find locations and build my first 5 stores. Yeah, after the 5th store is when they dissolved the partnership, and I actually built the 6th store on my own because they taught me so much. But
Sure.
that was kind of what got me into that. And I did a business plan beforehand, and my business plan indicated that I needed to build 3 stores to make the kind of money I wanted to make. And we built 3 stores, and I ultimately sold those 3 stores fairly quickly, within probably 2.5 years, which gave me a bit of a reputation as a flipper. But the truth of the matter was that those 3 stores didn't actually have a lot of upside to them, because they followed the old format of 70% Hispanic, 70% renters, and 70% low income. And I wanted to move into higher event prices and offering more services. And you couldn't do that in those neighborhoods. So even though all 3 are profitable, I sold all 3, and then set out and ultimately, got 4 more, which were all in areas that allowed me more to realize the overall package. And it turned out that the business was also moving in that direction. Now, when I first started this, I can't tell you how many people told me I was going to be a failure and bankrupt. Nobody builds stores that big. All right. Why are you leaving your aisle so wide? It's a waste of money. You're just giving the landlord money. All right. Why are you painting your stores these different colors and all that? It's going to make the clothes look dingy. Don't you know all laundromats are white? What do you mean you're using cards? Don't you know Hispanic people can't do cards? They won't understand cards. I got the same thing when I went to credit cards, by the way. Back then, it was just like cash into laundry cards. Oh, my God. When I went to credit cards, I got the same thing. I mean, it's just such an ignorant attitude about all these different things as I continue to, innovate and do things. Why would anybody want ozone? You'll never be able to explain the values of ozone to anybody. I got a lot of people who decided whatever I was doing didn't make sense. Eventually, actually, everybody started copying me, which I always thought was funny,
Well, I was just getting ready to say, as somebody who's obviously very passionate about the laundromat industry and feel like I know it pretty well, I find it borderline comical that, you know, people tell you what you can't do and what you shouldn't do. And I'm guessing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing these were old timers that have been doing it the same way for a long period of time and didn't want to hear that there was a better way to do things because that would insinuate that they didn't know everything. Would that be accurate?
First, I want to tell you that the sparkling people were totally open to my ideas.
Okay.
That was one of the big attractions to them. The three
Sure.
partners of sparkling were incredibly supportive of what I wanted to do. And in fact,
I'm sorry, what is sparkling? Is that a distributorship?
it was
Sorry.
Continental's West Coast distribution company at the time.
Okay.
Other ones, I just think, were so stuck in their own ways of what was going on that they were turning out cookie cutters. But there's another big difference, Dave, and that was you still weren't getting professional, well-capitalized owners into the business at that point in time.
Right.
So they were marketing towards people that were going to buy one and scrape together the 150 or the 200,000 that was needed, and the whole store was only going to cost 550 because that's all they could only get another 250 of financing for it. So the size had to be a certain size, and the equipment had to be primarily top-loader driven equipment, and it all kind of fits into it. And the rent could only be achieved in maybe a lower income area, right? Drop off itself wasn't a huge part of the business then, from their points of view. It was really, it was nobody building rooms to store finished drop off clothes back then. When I ended up designing stores that had, 140, square feet devoted to a drop off space alone in my first one, right? So, what are you going to put in there? I also was designing counters. I had a dry cleaning mentality at that time. I wanted to have a counter with a marble countertop that customers walked into and they touched and felt granite on their fingers, and the attendant met them there. So I was now devoting, 240 to 300 square feet to counter space and storage space. And this was like, what?
Unheard
What's
of.
wrong with you?
I know Dave talks all the time about elevating the industry. And I think for so long, laundromats have this stigma that they're just for people, poor people, and they shouldn't be nice, that you have to do the minimum, provide the minimum service to be able to make a laundromat profitable. And it's not that way. Like, first off, everybody deserves a nice place to do their laundry, regardless of what income level you're at. But you can make a nice laundromat and it can still be profitable.
Carla, you're so right. And it actually comes to something I wanted to talk about. And I'm just going to include it here right now, whether Dave likes it or not. All right.
I would expect nothing less, my friend.
I look at things, somewhat in a all encompassing way, and think about why people do stuff. Why people do things is very interesting to me. And I want to talk about Tide right now, because Tide is a very interesting thing. Well, Tide, as we all know, is part of Procter & Gamble, a huge Fortune 100 company. Tide is their best-selling brand of laundry detergent, sold throughout the world and particularly in America, heavily marketed, right? A few years ago, was it 3 years ago, they decided to look to see how they could do brand extensions. And they hired a guy and they made him head of some business development, position, whatever they did, they brought that guy in. One of the ideas he brought to the board was obviously, let's do Tide franchises. The way we see it now, those Tide franchises that have come out are Tide dry cleaners. And you have to sit there and you say to yourself, how the hell did Tide laundry detergent decide that they were going to come out with franchises, but it was going to be Tide dry cleaners and not Tide laundromats, which kind of seems to be more what dovetails together. Well, Dave and Carla, I came to only one conclusion, and I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to whoever that guy is, whose name I can't recall, and I don't want to mispronounce it, is the head of the Tide Business Development Group. I'm sorry, the Procter & Gamble Business Development Group, right? He went to his bosses and they had their presentation. He had everything. And he said, Tide laundromats is the way to go. We'll be able to the Tide laundry plus the detergents in there, plus all our other Procter & Gamble products. It's going to be incredible. And then what happened? Some old white guys on the Tide board, right, all raised their hands and said, we don't want to associate the Tide brand that we spend so much time making it a prime brand that everybody thinks is up here and associated with laundromats. We don't want to do that. We don't want to bring it into the gutter after all the billions of dollars that we spent. Let's substitute everything you just said for dry cleaners. That could be the only reason such a dumb thing was done.
Yeah.
Well, I happen to know for a fact that that's exactly what happened. We're in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is the world headquarters of Procter & Gamble. This is where they built the first 3 dry cleaners franchise concepts. And I won't go into details, but what you've described in theory of what you believe happened is exactly what happened. And I can't help, and we won't spend too much time on this, but I can't help but find borderline comic relief in that I've had conversations with the folks at Tide at the different clean shows, and they didn't know who I was from Adam. And they told me that in there, I actually brought up to them in their Tide booth at one point that I thought they were missing the boat. I don't know why I felt the need to tell them this, but I did. And
So they would compete with us.
Right. Yeah. So, but anyway, they thought it was just that they actually told me that's exactly why, is that the Tide was a multi-billion-dollar brand. And they didn't want, this is at the Clean Show, which is a laundromat convention, but it's also a dry cleaning convention. And they essentially took their Tide brand, and because they put it up on such a pedestal, it caused them to probably lose hundreds of millions of dollars, I would guess. Now, I don't know if you're aware or not, but they're actually building Tide laundromats now. So somebody somewhere at P&G eventually figured out that they've invested the Tide brand because of their, I guess, elitism. They've taken the Tide brand and branded it associated with a dry cleaning industry, which has been dying for 40 years and becoming less and less relevant in society every year. And they chased that dog. And when the tail stopped wagging, they decided, oh, maybe this is a good idea, which just made all the sense in the world from the beginning. The good news is that the folks at Tide, the laundromats that they're building, are very similar to the type of operations that the top operators in the industry use. They're building beautiful laundromats. But that being said, I think this is a good lesson for people in business when it comes to branding and mentality and all the things associated with it that, sometimes we can overthink things. So I want to go back to your story for a minute before we kind of close up this interview. So you built a few laundromats, you exited and sold them because you realized they weren't right for you, and you got a good offer, is my understanding. And so it was a smart move for you. I assume you were out of the industry for a few years. I actually don't know this. And then eventually decided that this was the industry for you and got back in. Maybe it was a very natural process. I'm not sure. But as you walk through that process, then you start to build 1, 2, 3, 4 more premium laundromats, and I would assume is nicer locations based on what you're saying. But you had a different business model this time around. Walk me through that process of how you built operations from 1 to 2 stores and 2 to 3 stores. And I see you as someone that has a tremendous amount of high level executive business experience. And you talk about networking and the value of those things and building relationships that you learned throughout your career. And walk me through how those skill sets translated to being in the small business realm, because you didn't build 4 at once. You built one and then another one. And I know they were pretty close together, but walk me through the process of, building a chain of laundromats that kind of went against the grain at that point, and frankly still do, of what the stereotypical laundromat is.
selling those first 3 stores allowed me to reevaluate my investments. So I was able to look at other businesses again after I sold those first 3 and made substantial money on them. And after looking at other businesses, I still decided the laundromat business most clearly met my criteria. So now I decided to develop a new business model. And one of the things that had originally scared me about the laundry business was watching how many stores were being built on top of each other. So I decided that I was going to create a model that moved me to new areas that I called underserved areas. So I highlighted underserved areas. And when I say underserved areas, which right now, nowadays, that's a byword for like minority areas, underserved population, right. Underserved areas. In terms of laundromats, the underserved areas were the suburbs. All right?
Yep. I know exactly where you're going with this.
Because nobody believed that suburban people who had wash facilities in their homes or in their condos or in their, developments would be interested in laundromats. And this was the next time that everybody told me I was going bankrupt. All right. That how are you going to find a market here? What are you going to do? And I went out to the suburbs and I did one and it worked. And then I did another and that worked. And the landlord of that one told me he had another space and I went there. Then my bank told me they had another one that I should go look at. And I looked at that one and you turn around and you have 4 of them.
So let me ask you a question. You had this idea, right? You had this idea that you were going to build a laundromat after experience in the business and success in the business, serving what I call primarily or probably 100% only self-serve business. For those that aren't in the industry, the self-serve side of the laundromat is where people come in, they pay to use the machines, they provide their own labor, and then they leave. They essentially rent the machines. They're renting the machines and the utilities is what they're doing. That's what we're reselling in the laundromat industry. And that is one side of the business, as we all know. What you're saying, Art, is that there is a good portion of the industry, and probably more so back then, but even now, that still believes that the only people that use laundromats are poor people. And the only thing poor people care about is price, because they don't care about value, and they don't care about customer service, and they don't care about safety, and they don't care about cleanliness, and they don't care about what I call throughput, the wide aisles that you referred to, Wi-Fi, modern amenities, safe facilities, clean facilities, all of those things. You had this idea before a good portion of the industry did, to build a laundromat, but a different type of laundromat in a different environment. What was your thought process in going through that when these people were telling you were crazy? Now, these are the types of laundromats that I own and operate. So obviously I'm 100% on board with this, and I know it works, and we both know hundreds of operators all over the country now. But back then, I'm guessing it was, I don't know if you were the first, but you were definitely one of the trailblazers of modernizing a laundromat and turning it into really more of a laundry business than a stereotypical laundromat.
I'm going to rephrase a part of what you said, because that's very key to understanding why I did what I did. You kept using the words, they don't care about cleanliness. They don't care about the machines. They don't care about this, that, the other thing. Oh, no. That's wrong.
Hogwash.
They care very greatly.
Absolutely.
But if your budget is only so big and you only have so much money to spend, then I would say, despite that it's not as clean as I would like, despite that the store is not as safe a neighborhood, despite the fact that there is a whole bunch of equipment that doesn't work, I've got to go here because I want to provide my family with clean clothes. All right? Right. So in other words, even if I was the best place and I was trying to make a fair profit that would meet my ROI requirements, all right, I couldn't go there because if they only had blank amount money to spend to provide their family with clean clothes every week, and they still had to feed everybody, then this is all they could do. All right. And now in their own mental, in their own way of mentally going through it, they could say, yeah, I went and used these top loaders and that stuff there, but these are clean clothes because I use those top loaders and everything is fine and it's done. And I got in there at 75 cents for 3 top loaders and 50 cents for dry. I got out of there for less than $5. Think about that. They just did the whole family's laundry for less than $5. Well, I want to charge $5 for my washer. Right? That's not going to work, is it?
Right. That's exactly right. And there are absolutely demographics in the world.
Why all of a sudden I was going
like
to
that.
other areas where
Yes.
they valued all those attributes that you and I both think are very, very important. They valued those attributes. And now they're saying, I'll pay the extra $1 for each size machine because
That's right.
I'm getting the attendant and I'm getting machines that are clean and I'm getting the ozone service and I'm getting, express washing abilities and all those other kinds of things. So that's the mentality that's thought. And then I also have the opportunity to pick up the higher valued services out there that I wanted to get, which originally was which originally was wash, dry, and fold, walk in. And then ultimately became the ability to also stretch my geographic area and get the home delivery and pickup. All your other competition in those other areas that I had previously been in, even when utility costs are going up, they refuse to raise their prices.
Mhm.
I mean, what the hell's wrong with these people? I said, don't you look at your bill? I mean,
Yep.
What are you seeing that I don't see in your bill? So, I mean, if you got people who are going for the less expensive solution, and you got owners who won't raise their prices, why the hell am I staying there?
Right.
Let me get out while somebody thinks this is great.
And so you ended up building a profitable revenue stream of self-serve laundromats, meaning people paying to use the machines and doing their own labor, just like you did in the non-suburb areas, the more urban areas, I would guess. But you did this in the suburb when people told you couldn't do it. And you built a revenue stream of self-serve laundry customers, but then you also found a new revenue streams that maybe other laundromats had in like a wash, dry, fold, but it was an ancillary service. It was a very small portion of their revenue stream. And so that's why I was referencing that you built really a laundry center versus a stereotypical laundromat, which is really only associated with, in most people's minds, with just the self-serve side of the business. So with your
that's
four laundromats,
that's also why I named. If you go way back, you'll
Yes.
see that I'm one of the first to use the word laundry center. All right,
Yes.
in all my advertising and all my signs, everything is laundry center. It was a laundry center where you can come in
Right.
and fulfill all your laundry needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give me a rough idea? You have 4 stores right now, and you have a very robust and successful pickup and delivery business with the Laundry Butler for You. You're in one of the top markets in the country as far as just sheer population, for sure. In Los Angeles, I think it's number 2 to New York City, last I looked. So you've built these very strategic stores, beautiful stores. I've seen them. They're gorgeous. You've really taken the value proposition that I talk about all the time and people being willing to pay extra for a higher level of value proposition. So just as a percentage of sales, I would argue that probably in most cases, a stereotypical laundromat in the self-serve sense is probably 85 to 90% of their revenue is from the machines. Is that the case with your businesses that you have now in your revenue streams with drop-off laundry and the pickup and delivery and things like that?
The pickup and delivery is a totally separate company.
Right.
I created my pickup and delivery as a totally separate company. A lot of that is for brand value. And a lot of that is because I did not want, because I was going for a very wide geographic area. I did not want to orientate it to any one particular segment or location. I felt like I was going to be advertising anyway, and I was going to be creating, new awareness. and I wanted to go outside the markets my stores are in anyway. So I didn't see
Right.
any reason why I shouldn't create a whole new brand. And I'm very, very happy that I did it that way. Also, by creating a whole new brand, if I ever decided to exit, I could sell that brand separately, which was
Right.
another thing. I mean, you could sell that brand separate. You could sell that brand with a store. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you have incredible flexibility there. So so that whole segment, which is our largest growing segment, is its own company.
Mm-hmm. So from a legal perspective, they're separated, but obviously you're utilizing your stores for processing and management and even the logistics of running your trucks out of it and things like that. If you were to consider
Dave,
those,
to be honest with you, the only thing I use my stores for is processing overnight. I have a whole different crew and a whole different management team that comes in for laundry butler work.
Right.
So
no,
they're
from
just
an employee
sharing,
perspective,
sharing the facilities with the whole
facilities.
Literally, one group is leaving and the other group is coming in.
Right. And that's what I tell people all the time when we talk about, my coaching services that I offer through Laundromat Millionaire. One of the things I tell people is when you already have a successful business model of a laundromat and it's already successful, paying its bills and profitable, and you take another business model, which is a completely separate business of laundry pickup and delivery, and you set it on top of an already existing model, but you're leveraging the infrastructure. You don't have to go buy more equipment. Your rent doesn't double because you doubled your revenues with pickup and delivery.
Biggest
You're
mistake
running
you
two
can make
businesses.
is if you're just going to do home residential, the only reason to build an OPL kind of site is if you think you're going to be going after a lot of commercial business. If you're going after a lot of commercial business, then build a purpose-built OPL site, include ironers, include finishing stations, do whatever you want. But that's not the business that I personally went after.
Sure. Yeah. And I think what happens a lot of times in our industry and even other industries, because I think there's a lot of parallels here for other industries that, maybe you and I aren't personally in, but there's a lot of parallels between, what they call vertical integration and building businesses on top of businesses and leveraging the facilities and things like that. So yeah, what I tell people all the time is there's more than one way to skin a cat, and the laundromat industry isn't any different. Carla loves that saying, by the way.
That saying.
Well, I'll tell you what's different. What's different is something you alluded to 5 minutes ago, where you said that it's a whole different business model. Mm-hmm. Owners who think that they could just buy a van and go out and do it, or just get a software to do that, they got a real problem, because of the economics are totally different from the laundromat economics. All right. Even without having the cost of processing included, their economics are totally different. Their production requirements are totally different. Their deadlines are totally different. Their error rates are very, very important to what's happening, to what they're doing. Even if they find somebody else to do their marketing for them, if they're not controlling their own marketing and understanding how their marketing is working, then they're relying on outside people or outside agencies, and that's a key developer of what they're going to do, and utilizing the budget properly. It requires new expertise and new willingness and new commitment. All right, and it concerns me the same. I'm sorry, Carla.
I was going to say, we talk about all the time that someone that just gets a truck and decides to do this on their own, the pickup and delivery, they might be able to do it in the short term, even do it decently well. But the problem is they're never going to be able to scale like that. Being a laundromat owner just puts you in a different position. That's when the trouble
really starts, when they try to scale.
Yes, it is.
As soon as it goes beyond blank, they are really in trouble. Yeah. And I'll tell you what this reminds me of. It reminds me of all the distributors who for years, and I've been fighting this in all my speeches and all my presentations and the articles I've written. All the distributors who try to sell laundromats as turnkey operation. All you got to do is come in on Monday morning or Sunday night and get your money and go to the bank. That's all you got to do. Don't worry. Well, now you got the whole bunch of same people who have software and they're selling the software and telling you, all you got to do is get my software. And all of a sudden you're a pickup and delivery company. You can go out there and bring it all in and don't worry about it. All right. Okay. Have fun.
Yeah.
Yep. No, we are absolutely perfectly aligned. And I think a big part of it is because we started our pickup and delivery businesses around a similar time. We've seen the growing pains that come with, we've seen how easy it appears to be in the beginning. You get a truck, you pick up a little laundry. How hard can it be? And I always tell people, if all you want to do is do a little bit, put, dink dunk around your store a couple miles, it's not a complicated thing. And I'm not going to tell you it is, but don't ever expect it for it to be anything other than an ancillary income. But if you see the opportunity in the country, in all markets, outside of maybe really rural ones, if you see the true opportunity in our industry and in our country, and arguably even outside the country, to build a robust and large scale pickup and delivery business, what people need to understand is this is a completely different business, and that your experience, even in wash, dry, fold, drop-off laundry service, has nothing to do with pickup and delivery. And so the people that approach it without that mentality, they get themselves in really big trouble. And people like you and I who've been through the school of hard knocks, that could be a whole different episode on the podcast of why that is.
Yeah.
But so listen.
I do have one more
question. Go ahead.
So Dave is always talking about how the laundromat industry is the best small business in America by far. And I know you looked at a lot of different businesses to get into, and you kept referring to your criteria. You looked at the gym, you looked at the car wash, but you ended up deciding on the laundromat industry. Why did you decide that the laundromat industry is the best small business to get involved in? Because we get a lot of people that are looking into buying their first laundromat. Why a laundromat?
Well, I'd rather say why I did it, because that's easy for me, right? One is it's a very flat structure. I didn't have to have hierarchical structure in terms of the number of people I worked with and how I had to manage them and what I had to deal with them. I know a lot of people in our industry get upset they have employees, but you'd be more upset if you had a whole hierarchical of managers and other people that you had to deal with going down. And in essence, we're really a very flat organization. It's you and there's everybody else for the most part. You know what I mean? The second thing is that it was a business that I'd be able to finance myself. By that, I mean, I'd be able to come up with my down payments and I'd be able to get bank loans, but I did not have to deal with what would be, let's call, equity participants. I didn't have to deal with VCs. I didn't have to deal with bankers. I didn't have to deal with board of directors, right? I'd be able to, in essence, finance this myself. Okay. Third, it's a relatively simple business in terms of the economics. You are quickly able to determine if you're making money or not making money and what you have to do to make money. And fourth, it's a business with what amounts to be a very easy exit strategy. Almost like selling a home, you have a whole broker institution that once you decide you sell, find your broker and you'll be able to find somebody to sell it to. While if on other small businesses, it's harder because a lot of those businesses have ownership involvement because the customer is dependent upon the owner. The owner found the customer. The owner has all the relationships to bring the customer in, all that kind of thing. So now the owner has to sign a deal for 2 years that I'll still talk to my customers and bring them all to you and all that kind of stuff. Why the laundromat stands on its own. None of these people care whether I'm really the owner or not the owner, all right? You're able to sell your business fairly quickly. I'm not telling you you're going to get the money you want, but the whole process is there with the brokers who sell laundromats. Is a ready market and there's a ready buyer. And I say it's very akin to selling your house. And so those are the primary reasons why I thought this was good for me.
I appreciate Carla asking that question, because that is something I'm very passionate about, as I do believe, not necessarily for everybody, but I believe for me and obviously for you, and I believe for a lot of people, that the laundromat industry and the laundromat business is very misunderstood. It's very misrepresented in a lot of ways, even within the industry. And a part of my passion is to get the word out there in the world of how great the laundromat industry is and how much you can impact a local community by running what I call a high-end modernized laundromat like yours. So anyway, listen, man, thanks so much, my friend, for taking the time to share your story with us and all of these nuggets of wisdom and encouragement, and all the lessons that you've brought to us through this. I have one last question before we let you go. And I think I'm going to ask most of our guests this question, and I'm really intrigued to hear your answer to this. And the question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given by someone else?
The best piece of advice was really that changed my life, my personal life, was from Jim Fifield again. He came in to have a personal meeting with me at Capitol, and we sat down, I remember, and he says to me that when people come into your office, you're giving them the answer. And they leave, but you haven't actually satisfied their needs. When the people come into the office, they want to feel like they're part of the solution, that you're not telling them what the solution is. If you start every conversation with, how can I help you? You immediately are taking a big step forward towards making them part of the solution, obtaining buy-in, and then you're still going to get exactly where you want it to be, but now they're part of it and they're not feeling they're being told what the answer is.
That is great advice for managing anyone.
Yes, it is. That's even great advice for parenting, which I'm sure you know. And I think I'm going to start using that on my children today. Well, listen, my friend, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for giving us a couple hours of your valuable time, and sharing with our audience, all your knowledge and expertise.
Yes, as always, Art, it is so good to talk to you again and say hello to your wonderful family.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Carla and Dave, thank you for making me part of this, and I'll look forward to seeing what it looks like on tape.